Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're here live through Microsoft Teams. Very happy to have one of our best partners join us today. It's Pulse Secure. But for just a brief moment, I'm going to introduce myself and Red River. My name is Mary Bascom. I'm part of the marketing team. We also have several of our account managers and engineers joining the call. And we thank you very much for joining. After the call, we will be sending a follow-up email to you. They'll have the recording of this as well as a survey. And if you take the survey, you will get the gift card. So one more thing to tell you about before I introduce Red River is on the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you'll be able to answer or actually send us any questions in the Q&A section. So we'll see that. And if you wouldn't mind, if you would just put your name in there as well as your question, that way our presenters can, address who's asking the question. So at this point, I'm going to put up, I have a few slides just to tell you about Red River, and then I'll turn it over to Pulse Secure. So I am going to assume I've got can you all see the screen of my video? All right, very good. So the first slide should be about Red River, a little graphic about our company. You'll see it's actually, we are now up to over 500 employees. And even during this pandemic crisis that we're having, we're on scale to actually employ another 100 people by the end of the year. So I'm happy and pleased to state that our company is doing very well and growing, and our customers are keeping us very busy. Also on that slide, you will see our corporate headquarters are in New Hampshire. We also have a very large federal office in the Washington, D.C. Reston area. And we also have an innovation center in Austin, Texas. It's a really cool place. And hopefully when everyone's allowed to travel again, we can have you there. You can have some executive briefings. We also do kind of like sandboxing with our technologies as well as OEM partner trainings. I also wanted to tell you about the Sacramento office. That's one of our newest NOCs, and we do support services there as well as application development. And then if we could go to the next slide, or is that me that has to go to the next slide? Sorry about that, guys. I'm just going to go page down. Ah, that's probably what I was supposed to say. I've got two screens. Sorry, everybody. Okay, so here's our capability slide. I'm not going to talk about all of our different capabilities. I just will tell you that Red River has been in business for 25 years. We do take a consultative approach with our customers. We have some long-standing customers. We have them of all sizes. And we know right now, keeping your data and your devices, everything secure, your whole enterprise, that's more important than ever. So that's why we're very happy and pleased to have one of our best partners, Pulse Secure, with us today. Just before I turn it over to them, I just want to tell you a few exciting things, that we're doing to help our customers and our communities during this pandemic. Our engineers have stood up some wireless, networks that are temporary, could be temporary for hospitals and insurance companies, that they can pretty much stand them up on the spot. This has really helped with, COVID crisis that we're having. We're also doing a lot of state and local government where we've helped, for example, the state of New Hampshire. We've helped them, build and rebuild their Department of Labor. So their departments for unemployment offices are running smooth, maybe one of the few in the whole country. But we're really proud of that. Our sales rep got a call from the governor directly thanking him for that. So I will take no more time here. I want to turn it over to our presenters. And again, I thank you. Right now we'll have Pulse Secure, Jim Hebler, and Brian Embry do our presentation. At the very end, I'll remind you that you'll be getting a survey. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mary. Are you guys seeing my screen?
We are.
Okay, great. So my name is Brian Embry. I'm with the Pulse Secure Portfolio Management Team. I'm going to be assisted today with by Jim Hebler, who is our sort of product expert in a number of different ways from a sales perspective. But with that, let's jump in. So wanted to talk today a little bit about Pulse Secure and the impact of coronavirus on remote. Hello?
We hear you. Did
And
we
the
lose
impact.
Brian? Okay, but I think we have him. It just stopped for a second.
Okay. The impact of coronavirus, how Pulse can help, and how Pulse is better than the competition in a high-level way. So for a little bit of some background on Pulse Secure, we've got been doing business for a number of years. We've got over 200 patents, more than 700 employees. We're in 80% of the Fortune 500, actually a little bit more than that now. And we're securing well over 20 million now endpoints. And we're used by organizations from as few as 300 employees to over 50,000. They're all trusting our products and services to deliver secure access for people, things, devices, and services. And I'm trying to go down the slide.
Well, Brian is doing that, if you can hear me, but we also at Pulse Secure support 13 to 15 free world governments, the intelligence agencies, major telcos. We've been globally in play since we were born in the military in the early aughts, and we were delivered to the private sector after that. We spun off on our own from Juniper Networks in 2014. And to Brian's point, we're up to 25 million endpoints and a lot of major space agencies, 90% of Wall Street, a lot of major mission critical assets are doubling down on the future vision that Brian is going to get into today. Thanks, Brian.
Oh, thanks, Jim. So this is a slide that talks about our portfolio. We're going to be kind of focusing on the upper left-hand corner of the Pulse Connect Secure, but it consists of a variety of products, all designed to provide secure remote access. Going from sort of left to right, we've got Pulse Connect Secure. That's, again, the VPN cloud endpoint compliance. We've got a software-defined perimeter product. Pulse Policy Secure, which is providing visibility, IoT, security, NAC, network access control, profiling, things like that. We've got a mobile workspace container product for BYOD devices, a virtual application delivery control device with web application firewall, and our Pulse One centralized management application. By now, everybody's very familiar with today's situation. Basically, the big statistic is that VPN usage grew astronomically in March. And what's really essentially what's changed is a month and a half later, working from home really isn't going away. It's likely to continue as we know it, and it's going to probably become more the norm than the exception. Studies indicate that working from home is even more productive. It does things like reduces everybody's time in a car or a train, reduces emissions, and even reduces office costs. But there are a lot of challenges for customers in today's environment now. Into the usual balancing act of running a network, everybody's struggling with adding all remote users who used to come into the office, doing that quickly, blending that with hundreds, possibly thousands of existing security policies, integrating all of those requests with existing ones, at the same time deploying new access infrastructure to handle that load, continuing to meet compliance requirements and mandates. Troubleshooting all of that is probably even more of a nightmare than it typically has been. simply because time constraints, the lack of face-to-face communication, that kind of thing. And then once you have it all working, making sure that you have it such that you can troubleshoot it, making sure that you can integrate that with your existing infrastructure. It's not an easy task in normal circumstances, and it's probably a lot harder now. So how Pulse can help. Our Pulse Connect Secure and Cloud Secure solutions offer a number of features and benefits to help out in this time of mandated work from home. We make sure that users can seamlessly access data center and cloud resources from virtually any location, whether that's at the moment from home or in the future, airports, hotels, that kind of thing. We enable that access with a single client. That client spans multiple operating systems. It's simple to download and install. Users can do it on their own and begin connecting to resources quickly and easily without administrative involvement. We ensure that users are authenticated fully before they actually connect to resources. And we have a number of mechanisms that administrators can enable to ensure that full user and device authentication happens and integrate it into their existing systems. We'll cover how we perform stateful endpoint device checks to make sure that malware doesn't penetrate, because everybody wants to use the device of their choice. We'll talk a little bit about single sign-on capabilities. That streamlines connecting to cloud resources especially. And we'll discuss a little bit about Pulse's ICE licensing. That allows organizations to handle emergency increases in maximizing the capabilities of the box when things like winter storms and other things come on in the environment. So first, however, I'd like to discuss how Pulse Connect Secure is deployed. We support all major cloud providers and have a full range of physical and virtual appliances. On the cloud side, we support AWS, Google, Alibaba, Azure, and that's because organizations typically use 2 or more cloud platforms, and you're able to quickly and easily connect your users to resources in those clouds. We also offer a full range of physical and virtual appliances. We support KVM, Hyper-V, and VMware on the virtual side, and we've got sort of small, medium, large, and extra large boxes on the physical side, all of which are perfect for hybrid IT. Moreover, we've got a full API that allows everybody to integrate things across the board into their existing infrastructure. One key advantage we bring to the table is our single client. It offers uniform access for a variety of devices, and that spans multiple operating systems. I mentioned users can download it and install it on their device of choice. We support Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, and Linux, and people can get it running themselves, really, without administrative involvement. That single client enables access to multiple applications simultaneously. You don't need multiple instances of the client on a single device. And it works for all Pulse Secure solutions, including our network access control and the software-defined perimeter products. That same single client downstream streamlines the whole user experience. It's, again, simple enough to download. And that client is also a key part of our ability to do posture checks. We do those integrated security checks before, during, and even to some extent after a connection. I'll talk about that in a couple of slides, but really it allows for better security compliance for organizations, and they can raise their security profile. Finally, if configuration changes are needed, that centralized management system, Pulse One, that propagates changes to all clients with no manual intervention on the part of the user. So really that client is a key advantage for our overall portfolio. I mentioned this sort of self-service onboarding. That allows users with iOS, Android, Mac, Windows devices to securely access applications and resources with almost any device. Things like Wi-Fi, VPN, and certificate profiles can be defined for enterprise resources. Guidance is provided throughout the whole process so that help desk calls are reduced. Another option is that the user can be redirected to Pulse Workspace, that's the mobile device management platform I mentioned earlier, or they can be directed to another application like Intune, Mobile Iron, or AirWatch and be onboarded that way. That said, you don't necessarily need a client. We offer clientless access too. And that's where users can access common web applications like Outlook and SharePoint and others using the browser alone. The users and devices are still subject to the same authentication requirements, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but in many cases, they don't necessarily need the client. At the same time, we support a variety of virtual desktop infrastructure and remote desktop capabilities. Many customers have legacy systems that require special care and feeding. We enable users to access those remotely. And those capabilities can also be combined with our single sign-on features to streamline and enable secure access across the board. And then with policies, the whole thing comes together. And it really is ideal for secure remote and mobile workforces. Another key advantage we have is making sure that all users who access applications and resources are verified and validated. We do that, one of the ways we do that is through dynamic multi-factor authentication. This is a mechanism where we check for access behavior based on things like location, device behavior, the type of the device being used, and we're tracking all of that, and then we subject that to further authentication checks if something is amiss. And that's really useful in case a device becomes lost or stolen, or somebody tries to log in from a location that's uncharacteristic. And we'll talk a little bit more about that location awareness in another couple of slides. We've got a broad array of standards-based mechanisms. This is really only a partial list, but by using things like SAML 2.0 and temporary one-time passwords, we're offering mechanisms that are really virtually used by every business and recognized by the industry as state-of-the-art. But we're also doing new things like integrating with Windows Hello for Business. That's a new Microsoft multi-factor authentication system that uses a combination of usernames, passwords, and a PIN or even a gesture to authenticate. And in that case, a gesture might be more unique to someone and easier to remember than a PIN. But it still ensures that only users and designated devices get access to appropriate resources. I mentioned the stateful endpoint security checks. That's where a device is subject to sort of before and during a connection. We look for things like the presence of antivirus software, anti-spyware software, patch levels of browsers, and that sort of thing. We can go even deeper. We look for things like the correct operating system version, specific files, all of these parameters and any more plus can be predefined by the administrator or added in a custom way. And that custom policy could look for things like open ports or the presence of third-party software. We maintain the state of that device throughout the connection and during multiple connections, and we'll flag a device if it ever shows changes that don't agree with the policies that an administrator has been defined. So then we can grant, deny, quarantine, or remediate access based on those policies, and we can even auto-remediate a device without a user's involvement if that's required. That also allows organizations to raise security profiles, reduce the chance of malware penetrating a network, and improving compliance. I mentioned the location awareness. This is another example of next generation features that Pulse offers. With this one, administrators can define whether or not a VPN is required based on where they are. So for example, today with mandated work from home requirements, administrators can specify that users working from home must use a VPN when accessing corporate resources. Eventually, when restrictions are lifted, those similar rules can apply for things like cafes, airports, hotels, and airports and train stations and things like that. But Pulse Connect Secure can also detect when you're accessing the network from the office. And in that case, we'll turn the VPN connection off so that you'll access applications and resources as efficiently as possible. We've got a feature called Per Application VPN. Sometimes bringing up the tunnel depends more on the application rather than your location. Using certificate-based authentication, connectivity really is as simple as launching the app you need. The traffic for that app goes through the tunnel, but other apps send traffic outside of it in the clear. As part of that per app VPN, we can enable domain-based tunneling. So for example, if you're browsing an internal web app, the browser knows to send that traffic through the tunnel and keep other traffic outside. It's tuned for mobile performance, so if you're on a Wi-Fi connection, you won't necessarily use cellular data or backhaul that traffic if you don't need to. We've also got a feature called Always On VPN. So for example, some industries like financials or healthcare, they require connections that are always on for compliance or regulatory purposes. And that's where a device automatically makes a connection to Pulse Connect Secure Gateway as soon as the user logs into the device. Once the connection is established, all traffic from that device goes through a protected tunnel. It's still possible to traverse a captive portal like in hotels and things like that, so you can still then establish a connection to the corporate resource. We also have a feature called lockdown mode. Users will be unable to disconnect from the tunnel, and that really ensures that all data in motion remains secure. The feature can be configured to be aware of a user's location. So if a user is connected remotely and then comes into the office, lockdown mode can automatically detect that and then be lifted. When the user goes back to the remote location, such as their home, that feature would then be reestablished, and again, data will go through that protected tunnel. Pulse Cloud Secure is our cloud access product, and when this is deployed, users only enter their credentials for a specific application once, and that can really significantly reduce things like credential theft. And we're all working, my neighborhood specifically has a number of Wi-Fi hotspots, none of which I know are terribly secure. So Cloud Secure also leverages that same endpoint security checks I also discussed. So it's looking at the device for the presence of various types of software, browser versions, that sort of thing. It protects the data in motion by enabling on-demand and location-based VPN tunnels to be automatically set up. And users don't have to set those tunnels up automatically or manually their own. Lastly, it integrates with third-party identity providers like Ping and Okta, Microsoft Active Directory too, or it can work with Pulse Connect Secure's own IDP capabilities. At the beginning, I talked a little bit about our in case of emergency or ICE license. This enables a company to maintain productivity, ensure that contractors and other personnel are able to do things like sustain partnerships and ecosystems and things like that, deliver continued services to customers, even when disaster strikes, like the coronavirus. It allows the maximum capacity of the appliance, physical or virtual, to be used for a temporary period. And because of the clientless capabilities of Pulse Connect Secure, users don't necessarily need to use the client. Again, they can use a device from home, like their home computer or a personal tablet. We'll still validate that device to make sure it passes those security checks. But companies can maintain business productivity even when things like coronavirus or maybe a winter storm comes by and forces everybody to work from home. It was initially designed for things like winter storms or shorter term events. The license is good for 8 weeks, can be turned on and off throughout. And like you, we're hoping that the whole coronavirus mandate eases up fairly soon. The last thing is that organizations have to integrate a difficult to integrate application into their infrastructure. Trying to deploy additional secure access capabilities or security in general. It's pretty much a tall order. We've worked really hard to make sure that we offer an open, standards-based platform with a comprehensive API, and that allows organizations to, again, integrate that quickly, gain better visibility, management, analysis, and raise the overall security compliance of their organization. So that you can really focus on what's important, which is keeping productivity up and everybody safe. To that end, we've put together a Pulse Cares program. It's an expedited and flexible licensing program so that you can respond rapidly to changes in work from home mandates. Basically, go to that website, pulsesecure.net, Pulse Cares. fill out a form, and you'll get a pre-configured virtual appliance and the licenses to accommodate those needs. And we'll get back to you within 24 hours. It's available to both customers and non-customers. And we've got some guidelines there on the website to help you navigate this whole process, as well as ensure that productivity remains high going forward. So real quick, I'd like to do a couple of slides on how Pulse is better than the competition. I'd like to compare us first to next generation firewalls. Really, Pulse focuses on secure access. As you know, many firewalls offer VPNs as part of the overall solution, but by trying to do too many things at once, firewalls can sometimes have a hard time responding. Some we found can only scale to, say, 2,000 users with the most powerful systems that they've got. They don't do things like endpoint compliance checks or clientless access, or some of the remote and virtual desktop access features, some of the next generation, the always-on, on-demand features. Really, Pulse Connect Secure focuses on one thing, which is enabling secure access for remote and mobile workforces. And that's really not a core focus of next generation firewalls. But by the same token, how do we compare against traditional VPN vendors? Well, most of them don't offer the breadth of features that we offer either, such as those endpoint compliance checks that I mentioned, or even the advanced biometric authentication support that we're offering. We've got the always-on VPN with lockdown mode, which I mentioned. And if a user, in that case, if a user tries to get around the VPN, that connection is terminated and the application isn't accessed. So the traditional VPN vendors are really not offering the breadth of features that Pulse Secure is offering. So that provides an overall kind of view of things from Pulse Connect Secure's perspective. I'd like to thank Red River and Mary for allowing me to present. Jim and I are able to answer some questions. I encourage everybody to go to Pulse Connect Secure and pulsesecure.net. We've got the ability to download a trial version so you can check out the features. But thank you very much for listening and your attention. Mary?
Thank you, both Jim and Brian. We really appreciate the presentation today. And also to all the participants, we're glad we got a few minutes to tell you a little bit about Red River. And as I mentioned, within 24 hours, you will get a recording of this presentation and just a follow-up along with the survey. So if you have any other questions, you can certainly add them in the survey or reach out to us directly. I do thank you for your time.